Hi, my name is Michelle Alexander, and I'm thrilled to welcome all of you to the Reentry Blueprint Solutions by Formerly Incarcerated People. I wish so much that I could be there with you, and although I cannot be there in person, I can assure you that I am with you in spirit. I have no doubt that this will be a phenomenal gathering. It's an important opportunity for formerly incarcerated people and their families to point the way forward. For the past several decades now, our nation has been in a race to incarcerate. Our incarceration rate has increased exponentially over the past several decades. We now have the highest rate of incarceration in the world, dwarfing even highly repressive regimes like Russia, China, and Iran. In the 1970s, we had about 300,000 people locked in cages. Today, we now have more than 2 million people behind bars, more than 6 million people under correctional control, and more than 60 million people branded criminals or felons saddled with criminal records that will follow them for the rest of their lives, and authorized legal discrimination in employment, housing, access to education, and basic public benefits. Millions of people in this country are denied the right to vote and excluded from juries for no reason other than their criminal record. We have a crisis of incarceration and mass criminalization in this country. And finally, the voices of formerly incarcerated people are beginning to be heard. For decades now, we've heard from all kinds of people about our criminal justice system and crime in our communities. We've heard from police, prosecutors, politicians, lawyers like me, and sometimes victims. But one group of people has been conspicuously absent, their voices excluded from the media and from political discourse, excluded from the rooms where policy decisions are being made that will affect their lives and the lives of their family and their communities. And that group that's been persistently excluded is formerly incarcerated people. People who know best how this system does more harm than good. The very people who are most likely to be able to imagine the kinds of alternative approaches to justice and to community building that hold some hope for our future. And so it is way past time for gatherings like this, and I couldn't be more thrilled that the Center for Returning Citizens and formerly incarcerated people around this country are finally demanding that their voices be heard and organizing for the restoration of basic civil and human rights and hosting gatherings like this one, where formerly incarcerated people and their families can begin to imagine together how their communities can be rebuilt and organized in a way that might allow them not only to survive this era of mass incarceration, but to thrive and bring this era finally to an end. There are many, many reasons why it's absolutely essential for formerly incarcerated people to have a voice in the policy debates that will likely determine their future and the future of their communities. Obviously, they know best. But it's important for them to be heard also because mountains of research shows now that people do not change their mind about policy or politics or law or justice systems based on facts or data alone. No, people change their mind based on stories, based on narratives. People change their mind when they hear from people with personal experience who have a different worldview, a different story to tell about the way things are and the way they ought to be. Personal stories and narratives, personal experience and the perspectives of individuals who've had a wildly different life experience have the potential to change our world, to change how people think about justice, what they imagine is possible in their communities, and to rethink the people who have been demonized and stereotyped and stigmatized for so long. It is unlikely that our nation will ever change its mind about how we treat criminals until we hear from those who have been demonized and stigmatized and labeled as criminals. To hear their stories, to hear their voices, and to come to hear what they imagine for their communities, for their own lives, and for their families, and to recognize that it is not unlike the dreams that we all have for our own communities and for our own families. There is so much brilliance and wisdom and useful experience in this room. And if you are someone who has never had the opportunity to hear from formerly incarcerated people, this is your chance to listen and learn. I guarantee not only will you learn something, but you will be inspired and motivated to ensure that their voices and their solutions and perspectives get to be heard by wider and wider audiences in the months and years to come. Thank you so much for being here, and I wish you all the best for productive, inspiring, and meaningful gatherings.